This video is about my piece, Angel of Majesty, though I am going to, I think this is more of an introductory video. I want to talk about Duchamp and the ready-made. So I might make a second video where I talk more directly about the piece in my show in question, which I will describe briefly, but then I'm going to mostly talk about Duchamp and the tradition of the ready-made. So Angel of Majesty is a ready-made. It's an HVAC like furnace filter, air filter that I found in the street. There was a batch of them, and all of them went into different pieces throughout the show as components, but in this case, the entire piece is one of these objects. And so, the theme of HVAC is kind of integral to my whole practice, or of just like having an ecosystem in a home of the heat and air and breathability and light and so forth that is needed to thrive and survive. I had a ready-made in my previous show at Gurn last year too. It kind of had a similar meaning to this one. That was a circulator pump for a hot water heater. But that one that wasn't fully a ready-made because I spray painted it and added a mirror. And this is just the object that I found. So yeah, so anyway, so we'll put that aside for a moment, and because I feel like it's just important to engage Duchamp. I think I already made a video about Duchamp a little while ago, but it didn't go that in depth. So, okay, so let's talk about Duchamp's Fountain, which is I would say his kind of flagship piece, his iconic piece, and the piece, like everyone knows this, not everyone knows this, but in contemporary art, this is an iconic work. It's basically a urinal that's on its side with a signature on it, and there was nothing like this piece in art before it was presented by Duchamp, and it gave birth to a number of different trajectories in fine art that really only came of age in like the 1980s. So he was like, like 80 years ahead of his time, which is kind of amazing. Duchamp is a really special artist. I think he deserves to be canonized the way that he is. There are a number of angles that I feel in my reading of it, my experience of it, that work opened up. So, first of all, I think that he was underscoring industrial production, which is something that I am interested in my work. A urinal is a mass-produced item, and this kind of industrial production was still relatively new in the early 20th century. Though, plumbing itself is actually very, very old. Like I guess even the Harappan culture in India had indoor plumbing, believe it or not. That's not that well known, I don't think. So like in like 2000 BC, but it took a long time for societies to have it again. But it was really starting in the late 1800s when there started to be an electrical grid, and uh, clothing began to be mass-produced, uh, and yeah, just the whole kind of chain of production was sort of a new thing, and there's this way in which that is that does kind of take over from human agency, and like some of Duchamp's writings kind of conveyed that this was his intention, that that there already is this kind of creation that's just going on, and in a way the most an artist can do is just sort of like turn something on its side or put a signature on it, and our art is really just sort of one little wave in this sort of ocean, the sea of production, and in a way his Fountain, I think, is a lot more radical in a lot of ways than 433 of John Cage, even though that was decades later, because it includes industrial production in the life of production, and doesn't really separate nature from industry, which, I mean, you could argue that's a mistake, but. So that's one side of things. And then there is, of course, the gesture of intervention into the circuit of desire of the art world. So this piece was, as I remember it, it was entered into a group show, and it wasn't actually, like, they kind of didn't want it, and it was, like, maybe, like, hidden or something in the show. And it didn't really, it wasn't like a big splash right out of the gate by any means. It was sort of seen as a masterpiece a bit later on. And it's like it's a gestures of this kind expose the desire logic of the art world of sort of entering something into this economy, this culture economy, assigning it a value, the sort of social conventions around openings and canons and so forth, and that's this is a really radical gesture to sort of bring that into focus. In such a economical way. Like even Duchamp's own work, like Nude Descending a Staircase, that's like a paint, like that's representational. To actually kind of intervene in this other way, just imagining doing that at the time is just really mind-blowing. And those two tendencies that I've just described sort of flowered in like 70s, 80s into minimalism, which is this kind of worship of industrial production, Donald Judd, Sarah, and institutional critique. And those are sort of both born in the same moment in this piece. I feel like that's kind of maybe a myth. Maybe there are more smaller scale pieces of this kind that were being made by other artists. Maybe there was a woman who did this first. But the myth still has value anyway, and there's certainly some truth to it. But then there's another element of it, of course, which is the profane nature of the piece. So, and this is, I think, where the real poetry comes. So there's this trajectory in art of thinking to represent less and less valorized echelons of society, right? So like earlier on, you only sort of paint the lives of nobles or gods or this kind of thing, and then it's like there's some kind of artistic magic in then painting the lives of like peasants, or someone washing dishes, or like this kind of thing, and that's some kind of tendency that's playing out in art history. And so with the fountain, you have literally the least valued possible object, right? Like the thing that you piss on, and that like pissing on something, like that is a, that is a that is the ultimate metaphor of conveying low value, and then he's turning that into a work of art, uh, and now it's been canonized as one of the great works of art of all time. And so it's like this really intense contradiction or antinomy, between uh, the lowest possible valorization and the highest possible valorization. And he succeeded at doing that, or whatever forces were working through him succeeded at doing that. And in a lot of ways that broke art forever, and that's something that we're still kind of examining, and then in that too is and this is kind of where I guess I diverge from Duchamp, or feel like he was missing something, is that there is this inherent humiliation in the work, right? It's like it's humiliating to look at it. So it's related to sort of a base function that no one ever knows how to talk about. You feel uncomfortable when you even like use the word for it. It's like the sort of unspeakable realm of sort of the waste and discharge on the other side of human civilization and life. It's so it's kind of his work often has this sort of aggression towards the audience, and he has other later works that are sort of meant to make you feel ashamed of your sort of baser impulses and this kind of thing, and that I think has some continuity with his pieces that that convey human desire as this kind of machine. Like he really has this kind of anti-humanism. Like he seems to not like humanity very much, and so in presenting a furnace filter, I guess I'm interested in engaging in his language. I think you sort of have to. It's still a horizon that is very much open, but the like a hot water heater in my previous show, the furnace is that piece was called Sacred Heart, and there is, humanity has a spiritual heartbeat. There really is a heart that we all share, which is God's heart, God's love, and there's like anti-humanism is over. Like it's a form that is no longer in the leading edge of civilization. Like it's passé. It's a false idol, because we sort of Duchamp already did it basically. And so I think with using an air filter and thinking about what an air filter does, the air filter is, first of all, it's part of this circuit that basically involves cleaning air, making the temperature the right temperature so that we can live our lives and think clearly, and sort of devote our time to useful things that aren't just worrying about our health, or about, not our our feelings. Um, and the air filter specifically removes um, particles and toxins that are sort of in a living space, and it's meant to protect the air. It's cleaning the air in part so that the air that then circulates back into the space is cleaner than it was before. But mainly, as I understand it, I'm not an expert, but mainly it's actually protecting the internal components of the furnace itself. And that is what artwork is. It's like preserving the sacred heart of humanity during a time when so much of what seemed absolute is falling away. And but an air filter gets used up over time. It's disposable. You have to replace it. And so I think another thing that I'm kind of interested in conveying is, there's an aesthetics to this. This pleated air filter is very, very beautiful. I think it has the appearance of religious iconography to me, but it's the reason it was created was for this industrial mode of production that we're in, and if it hadn't become art and hadn't been thrown away, it would have been used up. So it's like, and that's, I think that I seek to kind of convey a certain humility in my own project here, that this it's like an icon that will be used up, and right now it's in a state of pure potential because it was never used. It's not a used air filter. It's a brand new one that happened to be discarded that I found. But it kind of carries this potential energy in it to protect the furnace for a little while, but then it will be used up. And so like any sort of artistic language, it can sort of be a good thing, and then at a certain point actually become toxic, and it needs to be replaced. Like Nietzsche says, you can only sort of shoot your arrow so far, and then it lands somewhere and someone else has to pick it up. So there's some thoughts.